Welcome to my channel. This is Cagdas. I am excited to share this video with you. I'm going to introduce another interesting topic and hopefully you will feel inspired. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. In this episode, I'm hosting Lais de Oliveira, an entrepreneur with 13 years of experience in community building. Lais lived in 4 continents, working with the development of entrepreneurial communities across non-profits, public and private sectors. We are talking about community building and the opportunities in the global startup ecosystem. Let's hear what she has to say. Lais, do you think this pandemic made us seek for more belonging?
I think it made us more aware that we seek for it, but it didn't make us look for more. We've always needed belonging. Maybe we took it for granted when we had it. And at the same time, there's still a lot of research going on this topic, but there is some interesting research I can refer to later, so you can maybe add it to this to the description of this conversation. But there was some research already that demonstrated the pandemic did not make people feel more lonely than before. In fact, some people feel more connected than before. So we're still to see the effects of it. In a hunch, at first, we all believe that the pandemic made us all experience loneliness. Even I believe that because we were isolated. So one thing is that it did make us experience social isolation. And in that sense, it did make us all more aware of the importance of other people in our lives. But the pandemic does not equal loss of belonging or make us need more belonging. We've always needed belonging. And in fact, some of us may just have become more aware of how much they trust that net of support they always had. Their friends, their family, their closest ones. Some of us became even more united with our neighbors. So research is still to show the effects of the pandemic in the long term. But I think to the point of what you're asking, it did make us more aware of the importance belonging plays in our lives. Not necessarily it made us need more belonging because we've always needed it and we'll keep needing it.
You kind of mentioned one important note. We actually became maybe more connected. We have now strong relationship with our neighbors, friends. In a way, we are becoming like a close-knit community, and it's like being part of a community is important for everyone. My question to you is, do you think everyone has this potential to become a community builder?
Yes, definitely everyone has the potential. Because now, if you develop that potential, it is a different thing. It is a different choice. But I believe belonging is that one thing where every human has that experience of connection and disconnection, of loneliness, and the feeling that I belong, that I'm part of, that I'm taken care of. In that sense, belonging is one of those things everyone in a human life has experienced. Unlike studying engineering or becoming a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer where you need to study certain things which are not obvious to you, there are certain things, I believe, which are hardwired in us, which are coded in our very source code. Belonging being one of those, I believe every human knows how it feels to feel like they truly belong. And the thing is that what most of us do not learn in life is how to develop it and how to act upon it. But in the potential, we all know how it feels to belong truly versus, for example, to fit in. So if you see a very short, simple, but fun example, is that most American high school movies talk about belonging. They talk about the bullies, they talk about the nerds, and maybe the nerd who's in love with the cool kid. It talks about the cool kids, from Regina George to the girl in Clueless. I forgot the name of the character. All American high school movies talk about belonging and disconnect and etc. It shows how most of us need to be part of something, but most of the times just get lost on the way. And most high schools, in fact, demonstrate how much us as teenagers are searching for that sense of identity and feeling safe within a group. So that's our search. But we don't do that really well in high school. In fact, if you allow me to say, we screw it up at school most of the times because we create groups and clubs where we belong and we bully each other or we feel excluded. So most of us have that in our source code. We know in our hearts how it feels to feel at home, to feel comfortable, to feel that we can be authentic with someone and that sense of home itself. But oftentimes we settle for fitting in. We settle for being in a job that doesn't match our needs or buying something just because that will make us look cooler to others. So most of us learn in life to fit in versus to belong. And that's where I think we need hacking communities. We need frameworks to remind us of what true belonging is like and versus just pretending to be something we're not to feel part of something. Does that make sense?
That kind of makes sense, and you underlined another important point, fitting in, and also versus kind of belonging to a community,
Mm-hmm.
and we are already in search for it. And I know that you were kind of working on this area, and you have recently launched your book, Hacking Communities. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, at first it was my farewell to Malaysia. I was living in Malaysia for almost 5 years, and I had been building communities there. And thanks to Malaysia, I learned that the thing that I'd been doing since 2007 was community building. And thanks to Malaysia, I bloomed as a community builder. And I did build great communities in there on behalf of Startup Grind. And then on my own, I started several creative communities which would bring together founders and entrepreneurs and creatives and artists and developers together. So Malaysia served as a platform to develop myself as a community builder. And in 2018, when I decided to leave Malaysia, because even though I felt at home in there, it was 30 hours away from my family on a flight.
Yes.
So if anything happened to my parents, I would not be able to reach here sooner. And that was 2018. I did not even know about the pandemic yet. So I decided to leave Malaysia because of that. Because even though, again, still today I feel home. I feel at home in Malaysia. I love that place. Yet it was too far from my original family. So I decided to move, and I was not very happy about it. So I decided to write a book, which in fact I had the idea in 2014 when I first landed in Malaysia. I would write it as an article. And then as I decided to leave Malaysia in 2018, I reminded myself of that article called Hacking Communities and decided to write it as a book. So back to your point, why Hacking Communities, what inspired me? What inspired me at first was that I felt Malaysia gave me a ton of knowledge, experiences, and learning that I needed to give back before I left. So I needed to pass the baton in a way. But more than that, without that kind of like cockiness of, oh, I hold all the knowledge, I knew that a lot of people knew community building better than me, were better community builders than I was. And I actually wanted to also add in learnings I gained from them as well. So Hacking Communities came from my wanting to start a conversation with great community builders about how to get it done. And after I wrote it, actually it became more of a spiritual guide, because first I thought of it as a framework, as a guide, as a handbook, like kind of guide of best practices. And as I started writing, it became more of a personal experience. So currently, it is more of a book that talks about a state of mind, a state of spirit that you need to be in terms of core values, in terms of your willingness, your purpose, and the framework. Because I've learned the framework only doesn't help you build a community. You need to be in an abundant state of mind. You need to be in an authentic state of mind. You need to be humble, amongst other things. So as it is today, Hacking Communities, my inspiration is I want to get the inner community builder out of as many people as possible in the world. And that started from wanting to give back to Malaysia before I left. And yeah, so that's about it.
Lais, actually, for our audience, can you just tell us some more information about Malaysia, maybe especially the life in Malaysia, and also I'm really curious about the startup ecosystem there. Can you just give us some brief information so that our audience can have an idea about the Malaysian market?
Yeah, so Malaysia is a very interesting country because diversity is at its very core.
Yes.
I think this is why I felt identified with it, by the way, because I'm from Brazil. Both countries are countries of immigrants, people who came and have been there for generations, and people who look different and yet share a lot of things in common. So what I find beautiful of diversity at in every sense of diversity, but in this case, in the case of ethnical or background diversity, is that when there's no common grounds to bring us together, we have to find one.
Yes.
And Malaysia is a country that learned how to find a common ground amongst all its people, its different people, because not only have people who are descendants from mainland of China, Chinese, but also you have people who came from south of China, north of China. So within the Chinese population in Malaysia, you have different people. Within the Indian Malaysians, you have different people. Within the Malays, you have different people as well from different parts of Malaysia. So I think that Malaysia parts from that point, that colorful background, and it's the city where I lived, Kuala Lumpur, has a beautiful story which serves as a metaphor of how diverse it is because Kuala Lumpur means muddy confluence. And the name was given because the city was born at the confluence of the rivers Gombak and Klang in downtown Kuala Lumpur. Today they have Masjid Jamek, one of the main mosques of Malaysia, in there, and it's around the central market, and Chinatown is just around this because that's where the tin miners of Malaysia would discharge. Basically, trade would happen there, in a nutshell. Why do I find this beautiful? Because Malaysia is a muddy confluence. It's like Kuala Lumpur. It's the Malay chiefs and the Chinese and the Indians getting together to build a country. Besides other ethnicities who are currently in there. So if you take that as an example, Malaysia currently is a place which serves as the best, in my opinion, and I'm biased because I love Malaysia, but it's the best launch pad for you to start a business off to Southeast Asia. That being because Malaysia is a small country. It has a tiny population. So if you start a business in Malaysia, you know that you gotta get out. You know that you gotta leave to another country, either Indonesia or Vietnam or Philippines or the largest markets in Southeast Asia. The hottest in terms of population market of Southeast Asia is Indonesia. And they speak Indonesian, which is a language that came from Malay. They were the same people back in time. So if you start a business in Malaysia, culturally and language-wise, you are somewhat close, because everyone in Malaysia speaks English, but somewhat close to the Southeast Asia's hottest market. You are 45 minutes away from Singapore on a flight or 5 hours by car. And yet you have a cheaper labor cost with a high quality talent and cheaper living costs as well, which is great for a startup. And to complete that, most of the population in Kuala Lumpur is English speaking. So let's say you are from the US or Europe and you want to get into Southeast Asia. If you live in Singapore, that might be the place where you raise some funds, but you can fly there to raise funds living in Malaysia. And Malaysia have more affordable life costs, and you have diversity of talent, of diversity of pools of people who represent basically all of Southeast Asia. Not all of Southeast Asia, but a very wide range of it. Culturally similar to Singapore, culturally messier but similar, and culturally similar to Indonesia, and a place with great banking infrastructure, English-speaking population, great talent. So you've got all the ingredients to get a company started, then grow it and take it overseas. Three examples of that: Grab, who bought the Uber operations in Southeast Asia. One of the largest unicorns of Southeast Asia is from Kuala Lumpur. The group part of Catcher Group, who sold iProperty, iFlix, and now they're starting, they have at least 4 IPOs just within Catcher Group in Malaysia. Then you have Streamline Studios, a gaming studio that developed for James Bond, Final Fantasy, has their offices in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. So, and they have 230 or 50, now maybe 300, because the last time I had information from them was in 2018. Developers and designers working, building games for the world with global quality level, and at the same time, they're building it with the local talent developed in Malaysia. In a nutshell, there are great examples of amazing companies built from Malaysia, and you got an amazing ecosystem in there with enough layers for you to get an angel or a seed investment. Besides a lot of grants and incentives from the government, which I won't talk about right now. So I think Malaysia is a great launchpad, and it's not the final country where you'll stay with your company, but it's a great place for you to land and get it started. I hope that answered your question. It didn't sound like Malaysian propaganda, but I'm a big Malaysian advocate, so that's why I'm saying this.
You made really important points, especially for our audience. It's kind of a really good launchpad because it's close to the Indonesian market. Within like 45 minutes, you can reach out to Singapore, which is like kind of an important city, especially in terms of financial operations. So I think it's an ideal place. And I can now understand why Malaysia inspired you so much. But Lais, interestingly, your journey is now going on in the southeastern part of Brazil. You created I would say, a digital and yet rural lifestyle with your friends, and you call it the Roça-Office, the farm office, actually. Can you tell us how it's going so far? I know that you showed me the place a bit, but can you tell us this experience?
Yeah. Maybe I can show around there. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there is a bunny standing there. You won't see it. He's too far away. When he comes closer, I'll show him to you. So yeah, after I left Malaysia, I lived in San Francisco. And after San Francisco, I was looking for a place to set roots. I never thought Brazil would be that place. When I left Malaysia, I wanted to be closer home. And then I tried living in Portugal, which is 12 hours flight, so it's still okay. And I was in Brazil when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in March. I was actually getting my visa to move to Berlin on behalf of Startup Genome, because I was currently, at the time I was working as their community development director. And I was getting my German visa ready and preparing my bags, and then the pandemic hit. And it hit me. I wouldn't love to be in a lockdown across the ocean if something happened to my parents or to my brother and my closest family. And I decided to delay moving to Berlin for a little bit, and I would move in June. In the meantime, I started noticing how much Brazil needed help. We needed work, we needed people, and there's a lot of opportunities going on here. And as the pandemic hit, we needed help in terms of research and development of ventilators for the COVID pandemic, but we also needed help in general economic development. I was, on behalf of Startup Genome, visiting startup ecosystems all over Brazil, and I found there was a ton of great work being done, and just a ton of potential way above that work that was already being done. So great people working really hard, building great startup ecosystems, but if they're working at this level, the potential is at this level. And we're not only talking Brazil, we're talking Latin America, because Brazil is the doorway to Latin America markets. And we need to play that role, and we have to evolve and level up a lot to be that example and that doorway to bring capital and bring talent to not only Brazil, but Latin America as a whole. So that was quite clear for me that I needed to stay. And in the meantime, I'm a community builder, and I love, besides community building for startups and other types of communities for creative people, I've also wanted to be back to my roots. And this group of friends of mine were building this thing we call Roça-Office, which is a farm office as it translates, in my province, the province where I came from. And they were moving to this beautiful place, building a co-housing complex in here, which they are currently building. They're business partners, and I joined them as like the third wheel, I would say. So they're building this beautiful place around one of the most beautiful national parks in Brazil, like the Yosemite of Brazil, for reference. And with beautiful waterfalls, beautiful location, and this is the kind of biological kind of ecosystem in the actual meaning of the word. This is the ecosystem I came from. This is the place I came from. Like the scenario, the landscape looks like the one where I grew up. So I decided to move in here, back to my roots, and currently we have 200 Mbps connections, so we're doing great in terms of Wi-Fi. We're all working digitally, remotely, building businesses and products from here. And next year, I'll be joining on deck as a program director for the Community Builders Fellowship, which means I'll continue working remote from the farm office with 2 chicken, 1 rabbit, and more animals to come. So I think what brought me to this was the people involved. It's always about choosing your lifestyle with the people you want to be with. And that's what led me to, let's say, move back to the farm.
Actually, Lais, you kind of inspired me. I have to confess, I'm a big fan of Brazil, especially Brazilian churrascaria, and it was always on my bucket list. Hopefully, after this pandemic, I am really looking forward to visiting Brazil, and maybe even if we have an interview in this farm office and show the audience, what this experience is really like.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I can maybe show my rabbit. My bunny just decided to lay down in there, so he won't come any closer. But I can show you around a little bit later. But yeah, it's. I think it's hard to be back to the way I used to be. Maybe I can just give you a quick tour around the house, not too far, so that I don't lose the connection. The modem is around where I am. So this house is 120 years old, as you can see. So there's actually 2 houses there where we sleep. So it's more like a co-housing. We all have separate rooms. And this is the central house where we have food and we dine and we have lunch. And this house is 120 years old. And this is made of bricks that were handmade at the time. And we have a beautiful deck here, which is basically my favorite part of the house.
It looks
and
really
this
cool.
is basically, yeah. And this is it, where we live. And if you look across, this is a national park, a national reserve. So our neighbor is a jungle.
So you are living a really good and kind of a tropical life.
It is. It's kind of a Brazilian stereotype, which does not actually. It's not like Brazil everywhere. Many people come to São Paulo or Rio and maybe expect a lot of jungle and monkeys. This is not really how Brazil looks like everywhere. Brazil is very diverse. We have a lot of big cities that just look just like New York City, São Paulo, Rio, etc. But this is it's actually a very unlikely place for a Brazilian to live in these days because most people went to live in big cities. And I think many people now are looking towards what we are building here. Many people are looking for the rural lifestyle again, not only in Brazil. So that's what we're doing. If you're free to belong anywhere, you might as well choose where to live and who to live with. So that's the core idea of it.
Lais, I want to thank you very much because you gave us important insights about how to create a really sustainable community. You gave us a lot of inspiration about the Malaysian market, which is a launchpad for the Southeast Asian market. And you kind of showed us this tropical and kind of really cool lifestyle in Brazil. Once again, thank you very much for all these insights. Obrigada.
De nada. Thank you very much as well, Cagdas. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video. In the next episode, I will host another guest with another interesting topic. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. Till next time, take care, always go with the flow, and stay awesome.